welcome back to Mud Brick Cottage for part 2 of drawing a leaf. Before we go any further with our leaf, I'd like to pass on this tip. Take a photo of your subject and print yourself a copy to use as a reference. And then you won't have to rush because your model's getting tired of holding the pose. And something great happens when you see a 3D image now converted into a 2D. It's flat. It's much easier to see the colour definition and where the shading belongs. My leaf sadly did die, but I printed out this nice copy and I've got a new leaf that I can use as a reference as well. Now before we start with our colours, there's something I want to drill down into that I mentioned last time. I might have just skipped over it a bit too quickly. That is about using either a blue-green or a yellow-green. Now here I've drawn a few scribbles of different greens, and I think you can probably see that these are more of a blue-green. They're sort of a peacock colour, a jade, a turquoisey kind of colour, and these are definitely more yellow, an olive colour, a true green, this lovely bright limey colour, this olivey colour. Now this blue here, you might find it skips over to both, and it is quite workable either with the yellow colour or with the blue, with a little bit of something over it. So some colours are kind of medium. You can get away with them, but only in small amounts. Mainly you need to stick to this family of colours, so decide whether your leaf is bluish or yellowish. Things like sage and leaves with fluff with hair on them are usually bluish. Gum leaves will be bluish. This one will be this is like lime and lemons. Now here's a couple of examples just to help you clarify it. This is an apple leaf. Now it's, in my mind, just a pure true green. There's a little bit of purple in here for the shading. This is olive green. You can really see the difference, can't you? It's quite yellow and lime down the vein, and there's a little bit of blue on the underneath of the leaf. So I was able to get away with it because I didn't go too far with it. If I'd gone really intense blue, it just would not have worked. And this one obviously is very yellow and green and limes, all of the yellow-based greens. So that was a quite easy one to work with. When they're just green, they're a little bit harder. I'll just move these out of your way. Now, I'm going to start with we're going to start working from the lighter colours to dark. With some mediums, you don't necessarily work light to dark, but you need to with pencil because it doesn't cover the paper very well if you excuse me, if you start too dark. Now, this is my new leaf. I can see quite a lot of highlights here down the centre of the leaf and off to the side where this kind of ripply effect is happening. It's not so obvious on the print that I made. It's not obvious at all. So I don't want to use that as my real guide because it's a little bit flat for me. I want you to learn how to do the highlights. So this is how we start. Get a very light pencil, green, slightly whitish, it's okay. All I'm doing is mapping this out so that I won't overstep it later when I start adding colour. So I'm just going to colour in the areas where I can see the light shining on the leaf, and just a little scribbly area here, and afterwards I'm going to go over this with a white pencil and make it look really like a highlight. Now notice down at the bottom of the leaf here, there's a bit of a gap between the edge of the vein and where I'm putting the highlight. So again, this is just a guide for myself so that I don't go ballistic and paint the whole thing green when I didn't mean to and get a bit carried away. So these parts are all going to be whitish, quite light, and I just notice there that actually stops. And there's a little bit down here, so make sure you stop when the leaf stops. There's a little bit of highlight here. It's a bit tedious, this part, but if you don't map this out right, you won't be happy with the results. So just spend a few moments capturing these light parts. One of the big advantages of doing this is that it makes you really concentrate on what you're looking at on the leaf and seeing things that you may not have noticed before. I can see that there's still some light parts down here that I didn't get, so I'll put those in, and I think that's pretty much got the feel of it. Now I'll leave that pale green because it's going to be blended afterwards, and I'm going to start on the lighter green. Let's get down to the actual colouring in of the leaf now, and the way that you hold your pencils when you're doing this. To get a very light stroke on your pencil, which I want you to do for the first colour, you hold the pencil fairly far up the end of the shaft, and you'll find you can do a quite light stroke there nicely with a little bit of control. If you hold it about halfway down, you'll find you can go a bit heavier, so you can be flexible with that. And if you hold it right down here, of course, you'll be able to make these really definite marks. Not at this stage, we're just going to put light colours in first. These marks I'm doing here are called hatching. You see it all the time on etchings and in drawings. And when you take a second colour and go in the opposite direction, of course, cross hatching, keep the lines close together about the same length if you can control that. And that's called cross hatching. You may not ever need to know that, but there again, it's a fact. Now, and there's the darker colour going on top of the lighter colour, cross hatching. I do another thing called scrumbling, which I can't really describe, but I'll show you, which is a combination of all sorts of scribbling and backwards and forwards, random kind of look. Now, there's another little thing you can do here. That is, once you've got 2 rows of the cross hatching in, and you've still got some white space and you'd like it to be a bit heavier, then you can go little ovals all over the top of the cross hatch to fill in the white gaps. It's a really nice way to blend the colour in and make a darker area. See what I've done there? It's a really nice effect. You may remember back in the very beginning of these videos, I talked about if your leaf had a turned over edge, when you were doing your very first outline, to draw both edges, the straight one and the curly edge. And I'm just going to clarify that for you because I may not have given you enough information about that. If the leaf is turned over, when you did your initial outline with your 2B pencil, you would have just followed the leaf around and then just gone on that straight edge that has curled and continue on. And then when you look back at your leaf, you'll have to wing this part. It's okay, you can do it. So just look at your leaf, watch what's happening, and wing this little piece of edge. The back of your leaf, you'll notice, is quite a different colour to the front. This one was a very sort of muted pale green. It's often quite colourless, doesn't have any shine. And get that right, do exactly what the leaf is showing you, the pale green, and then you can just go ahead and do the rest of your drawing the leaf with the leaf the way that I showed you earlier on. I had to stop myself there because I wanted to colour the whole leaf in pale green, and that's something you have to resist because it's just not right, because the leaf wasn't pale green all over. But, you know, there you go. Now I'm taking the second green, my middle colour that I chose, and I'm going to start doing a similar thing. You just use the areas where the middle green appears. That's around this section here, right down this side, and see at the bottom of the leaf, it's just quite green, and alongside the vein here. This part that I've left, that I did light, I'm not going to interfere with. I'll come back to that later. If I can resist, I won't colour it in. So starting off again as I did before, this time always still going in the same direction, but watching the vein very carefully to make sure that I don't get, that I actually leave the vein clear. So I'll start with the scribbling, and something else that I should have mentioned earlier was have a piece of paper under your hand so you don't mess up your work as you're going. Now there's hardly any indent here at the top of the leaf from the vein, but there's quite a bit happening around the edges. So I'll be concentrating on that part and this central section, which is quite green. So again, I'll start drawing it in like this. We'll speed it up. You can have a look at how it all comes together. to finish up part 2, I'd like to share these 3 tips with you. 1. Always start shading with light strokes. 2. Look for contrast. And 3. Scrumble is not a dessert made with apples. In the final video, we'll increase the shading, clean up, and we'll add a shadow. I hope you've enjoyed this class so far. If you have, click like and don't forget to subscribe.